I'm Alara, I'm 32 years old, and I'm pregnant with my fiancé's baby. This was supposed to be the single most joyous time of my life, a beautiful chapter where all the pieces were finally falling into place. At least, that's what I believed until a few days ago. I thought our future was a house we were building together, a structure made of love, trust, and shared dreams. Now I know the truth. The foundation is rotten, and the man I was going to marry was about to hand me a demolition order disguised as a loving conversation. He sat me down to question if our baby was even his, all part of a twisted, cruel plan I was never, ever supposed to know about. But he underestimated me. He had no idea what I'd heard him saying in the kitchen just the night before our story. Liam's and mine always felt like a fairy tale to other people. We met at a university alumni event, two people who had somehow missed each other for years only to connect instantly over a plate of mediocre appetizers. He was a marketing manager, charming and ambitious, with a smile that could disarm a battalion. I was an architect, someone who saw the world in lines, structures, and possibilities. He saw the big picture, I obsessed over the details that made it strong. We balanced each other. He softened my pragmatic edges, and I grounded his soaring ambitions. Our relationship was a whirlwind of picture-perfect moments. Hikes in the fall, trips to the coast, quiet nights spent sketching out our dream house on a dinner napkin. He proposed a year later, on the anniversary of our meeting, at the same spot. He got down on one knee and promised me a lifetime of stability, of love, of being a team. I cried, of course. I thought I had found the one person who understood the blueprint of my soul, and through it all, there was Chloe. My best friend since we were awkward teenagers navigating high school. Chloe wasn't just a friend, she was my sister in every way that mattered. A talented graphic designer, she was the vibrant, free-spirited yin to my structured, organized yang. We had a bond forged in 1,000 sleepovers, secrets, and shared heartbreaks. When my father passed away during my first year of college, I shut down completely. I wouldn't eat, I wouldn't talk, I just existed in a gray fog. Liam wasn't in my life then. It was Chloe who drove 6 hours straight, burst into my dorm room, and simply held me until I finally broke down. She didn't offer platitudes or easy fixes, she just shared the silence with me until I was ready to speak again. That was her gift. When I introduced Liam to her, I was nervous, as anyone is when two vital parts of their world collide. But they got along instantly. I see why you love him, Elle, she'd said after their first meeting, giving my hand a squeeze. He looks at you like you're the only person in the room. Their friendship felt like a blessing. The three of us became an inseparable trio. We'd have game nights, go on weekend trips, and celebrate every little victory together. Liam would often consult Chloe on design elements for his marketing campaigns, and she'd joke about giving him the family and friends discount. I never once felt a flicker of jealousy or suspicion. Their dynamic was so comfortably platonic, so sibling-like, that it never occurred to me to see it as anything else. It was my fiancé and my best friend. What could be safer than that? A few years ago, I was up for a major promotion at my firm. The final project was grueling, demanding 70-hour workweeks and all of my creative energy. I was running on fumes and self-doubt. One night, I came home close to midnight, completely defeated after a major setback, convinced I was going to fail. I walked in to find the apartment filled with the scent of my favorite meal. Liam had cooked, and Chloe was there, setting the table. They had conspired to give me a surprise evening of encouragement. Liam poured me a glass of wine, and Chloe had printed out a dozen positive emails and notes I'd received from clients over the years. They'd plastered them on the wall under a banner that read, "Our favorite architect." Seeing their two faces, so full of belief in me when mine had run out, was a moment I sealed in my memory as proof of how lucky I was. I had a partner who supported me and a best friend who championed me. This was my foundation. This was the solid ground upon which I was building my entire life. The two pink lines on the pregnancy test didn't feel real at first. I stared at the little plastic stick, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I sat on the edge of the bathtub, my breath held tight in my chest, and just looked at it for a full 5 minutes. A baby. Our baby. A tiny, miraculous fusion of me and Liam. A wave of pure, unadulterated joy washed over me, so potent it brought tears to my eyes. This was the dream we had sketched on napkins, the future we had whispered about in the dark. I couldn't wait to tell Liam. I spent the rest of the afternoon in a happy haze, planning the perfect way to reveal the news. I settled on something simple and sweet. I bought a tiny pair of baby booties and placed them in a gift box, along with the positive test. When he came home from work that evening, I could barely contain my excitement. "I have something for you," I said, my voice trembling slightly. He smiled, his usual charming smile, and took the box from my hands. A random Tuesday gift? What did I do to deserve this? He opened it, his expression shifting from curiosity to confusion as he looked at the booties. He picked one up, dangling it from his finger. Then he saw the test stick underneath. He looked from it to the booty, then to my face. I watched him, my heart about to burst, waiting for that explosion of joy, for him to sweep me up in his arms. He looked up, and his smile was strange. It was there, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Wow," he said, his voice quiet. "Wow, Ilara. You're pregnant?" "We're pregnant," I corrected him gently, my own smile faltering just a little. "Right?"
"Yeah."
"We're pregnant," he echoed, almost as if he were trying the words on for size. He stood up and did pull me into a hug, but it felt stiff. Mechanical. Not the cathartic, movie scene embrace I had imagined. He held me for a moment, then pulled back, running a hand through his hair. "Wow. I guess I need a minute to process this. This is huge." Of course, it was huge. I told myself his reaction was normal. He was shocked. The reality of becoming a father was sinking in. I pushed my disappointment aside and focused on the positive. We were having a baby, but in the weeks that followed, that initial, unsettling crack in our foundation began to widen. Liam grew more and more distant. The change was subtle at first. He started staying late at the office almost every night. When I'd ask about his day, he'd give me vague, one-word answers. Fine. Busy. Tiring. The easy, flowing conversations that had been the bedrock of our relationship dried up, replaced by a strained silence that felt heavy and suffocating. His phone, which used to lie casually on the coffee table or kitchen counter, was now always in his pocket or face down beside him. He'd take calls in the other room, closing the door behind him. Once, I walked in on him quickly ending a text conversation, his thumb swiping furiously to close the app as he saw me approach. "Who was that?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Just a colleague." "A work thing," he mumbled, not looking at me. "It's this new campaign. It's a nightmare." I tried to be the supportive fiancé. I told myself he was stressed, that the pressure of providing for a new family was weighing on him. I'd make his favorite dinners, try to draw him out, suggest we watch a movie or go for a walk. But it was like trying to connect with a ghost. He was physically present, but his mind, his heart, was somewhere else entirely. I felt a growing sense of loneliness, of being on the outside of my own life. Naturally, I turned to Chloe. We met for coffee at our favorite spot, the one we'd been going to since we were teenagers. I poured out all my fears and anxieties, my voice thick with unshed tears. "He's just so far away, Chloe." I tell him. "I'm pregnant with his child, and it's like a wall went up between us." Is he not happy? Is he regretting this? Regretting me? Chloe reached across the table and took my hand. Her expression was one of deep sympathy. "Oh, Elle, don't think like that. Of course he's happy. He's probably just terrified. Guys are like that. The reality of it all hits them like a truck." "I guess," I whispered, wanting so desperately to believe her. "Seriously," she continued, her gaze earnest. "He loves you more than anything. But this is a huge life change. It's a lot of pressure. Are you doing okay, though? I know pregnancy can be really hard on a relationship. Maybe you just need to give him some space to process it all in his own way." Her words seemed so reasonable, so wise. Give him space. It sounded like the mature, understanding thing to do. So I did. I stopped asking about his long hours. I stopped trying to pry into his silences. I focused on my own health, on the tiny life growing inside me, and told myself that Liam would come back to me when he was ready. I leaned on Chloe. Texting her daily updates, confiding in her about my morning sickness and my secret fears. She was my rock, always there with a word of encouragement, always reminding me to be patient with Liam. Looking back now, I see the insidious genius of her advice. She wasn't just comforting me, she was actively helping him build the wall between us, brick by brick. It happened on a Thursday night. The day had been long and draining, and a wave of first trimester exhaustion had hit me like a physical blow. I told Liam I was going to take a hot bath and head to bed early. He just nodded, his eyes glued to his laptop screen. He was seated at the dining table, which had become his makeshift office, surrounded by a fortress of paperwork that seemed to grow larger every day. The bath was soothing. The warm water eased the ache in my back, and for a little while, I was able to push the anxieties away. I imagined the baby, our baby, safe and warm, and a gentle smile touched my lips. I must have been in there for nearly an hour, lost in thought. When I finally got out, wrapped in a fluffy towel, the apartment was quiet. I assumed Liam had either gone to bed himself or was still engrossed in his work. Damn, my throat was dry, so I decided to get a glass of cold water before turning in. I padded softly down the hallway, my bare feet making no sound on the hardwood floors. As I neared the living area, I heard the low murmur of his voice. He was in the kitchen, his back to me. He must have seen me go into the bathroom and assumed I'd be in there for a while. He was on the phone, his voice hushed and urgent, the tone you use when you don't want to be overheard. I stopped instantly, hidden from view by the angle of the hallway. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, not really. But something in his tone, a note of raw panic, held me frozen to the spot. I don't know what to do, Mom, he was saying, his voice strained. It's a complete mess. A total disaster. A beat of silence as his mother, presumably, spoke on the other end. My heart began to beat a little faster. Was he talking about his job? That big campaign? No, it's not just work, he sighed, and the sound was so full of despair it made the hairs on my arms stand up. It's everything. Alara's pregnant. He said it not with joy or even shock, but with the flat finality of a death sentence. Another pause. I pressed my back against the cool wall, barely breathing. Of course I mean, yes, it should be a good thing, he stammered, his voice dropping even lower. But it's not that simple. There's Chloe. My blood ran cold. Chloe? Why was he talking about Chloe? No, Mom, she doesn't know anything, he said, his words coming faster now. Nobody knows. It was a mistake. A stupid, terrible mistake. It only happened a couple of times, but God, I'm so stupid. A wave of nausea, far stronger than any morning sickness I'd experienced, rose in my throat. I felt the floor tilt beneath my feet. A mistake. A couple of times. With Chloe. My Liam. And my Chloe. The two pillars of my life. It wasn't possible. My mind refused to accept it, to process the sheer magnitude of the betrayal, but it got worse. So much worse. I don't know what to do, he hissed into the phone. How do I fix this? I think I love them both. And now Alara is pregnant, and it feels like a trap. I'm trapped. I clapped a hand over my mouth to stifle a sob. The towel felt flimsy, and I was suddenly aware of how exposed I was, standing in the dark hallway of the life I thought we were building. There was a longer pause. His mother was clearly giving him advice. Awful, life-shattering advice, it turned out. What? Liam said, his voice sharpening with interest. What do you mean, use it? Another pause. I could almost hear the venomous words being whispered. Through the phone line, Liam was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different. The panic was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating tone that I had never heard before. It was the voice of a stranger, so. I just, pretend it's not mine, he said slowly, testing the shape of the idea. You're saying I should question it? Tell her that I think she cheated on me? He let out a short, sharp, humorless laugh. Wow. That's diabolical, Mom. My own heart stopped. This wasn't real. This was a nightmare. No, I see it, he continued, the idea taking root, growing in his mind. It would shift everything. All the pressure would be on her. She'd be so busy defending herself, so devastated that I'd even think that she wouldn't have time to notice how distant I've been. She wouldn't question me about working late, about anything. And, if things go badly, if she leaves me, then I'm the victim. I'm the poor guy whose fiancé cheated on him and got pregnant. Not the guy who abandoned her. He fell silent. The plan, in all its grotesque cruelty, hung in the air between us. He was going to take my greatest joy, our child, and weaponize it against me. He was going to accuse me of the very thing he had done, deflecting his own guilt by shattering my heart. All to escape a trap he had set for himself. And his accomplice in this scheme was my best friend, the woman who held my hand and told me to be patient. I heard him take a deep breath. Okay, he said, his voice now firm, resolved. Okay, Mom. I think that's what I have to do. It's the only way. He ended the call. The silence that followed was more deafening than his words. I stood there in the darkness. Trembling, the cold seeping into my bones. The life I had, the man I loved, the friend I cherished, it had all been a lie. And in the space of a single, whispered phone call, my entire world had been reduced to rubble. I don't know how long I stood there in the hallway, pressed against the wall. It could have been a minute or an hour. Time seemed to have stretched and warped, losing all meaning. My mind was a roaring storm of his words, a cyclone of betrayal and pain. A mistake, a couple of times, with Chloe. Tell her I think she cheated on me. I'm the victim. Somehow, my legs remembered how to move. I retreated, backing away down the hall as silently as I had come. I slipped into our bedroom, closing the door with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot in the ringing silence of my ears. I stumbled to the bed and sat down, wrapping my arms around my stomach. The baby. My baby. The one pure and beautiful thing in all of this, and he was going to use it as a weapon. A sob clawed its way up my throat, but I choked it back, swallowing it down like poison. I couldn't cry. I couldn't make a sound. If he knew I'd heard, his plan would change. He'd find another way to lie, another way to manipulate the situation. The only power I had left was the one thing he didn't know. I had the truth. Liam came into the bedroom a few minutes later. He was humming softly to himself, a casual, carefree sound that was a monstrous counterpoint to the ugliness I now knew he was capable of. Hey, you're in bed already, he said, his voice light. He smiled at me, the same easy, charming smile he had used 1,000 times before. But now, I could see the mechanics behind it. It was a mask, a carefully constructed facade to hide the rotten core beneath. Just tired, I managed to say, my own voice sounding foreign and brittle. I kept my face turned towards the window, away from him, praying he wouldn't see the devastation in my eyes. Get some rest, he said, leaning over to kiss my forehead. I flinched, an involuntary recoil from his touch. His lips felt like ice against my skin. If he noticed, he didn't say anything. He just went about his nightly routine, brushing his teeth, changing his clothes, as if it were just another ordinary night. As if he hadn't just conspired to detonate our entire life. Lying there in the dark next to him was a unique form of torture. His steady breathing, the familiar warmth of his body beside me, it was all a lie. I felt like I was sharing a bed with a complete stranger, a monster wearing the face of the man I loved. I didn't sleep a wink. I stared into the darkness, my mind replaying the phone call on an endless, agonizing loop. Every little thing from the past few weeks suddenly clicked into place with horrifying clarity. His distance. The late nights at work. The secretive phone calls. It wasn't the stress of becoming a father, it was the guilt of being a cheater. And Chloe. Oh, God, Chloe. Her sympathetic words, her wise advice. Give him space. Be patient. She wasn't helping me, she was helping him. She was my confidant, my rock, all while she was actively betraying me with my own fiancé. She had listened to my fears about our relationship, all while being the very reason it was falling apart. The treachery was so deep, so complete, it was hard to comprehend. The next morning, I moved through the world like an automaton. I made coffee, I got dressed, I pretended. Liam was in a strangely good mood, cheerful even. He was practicing, I realized. He was rehearsing for his new role as the carefree man who had no idea his life was about to be upended by his cheating fiancé. He was setting the stage for his big performance. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was a text from Chloe. Morning, sunshine. How are you and little bean feeling today? Thinking of you. XO. I stared at the message, at the cheerful little XO, and a cold, hard rage began to solidify in my chest, displacing some of the grief. The audacity. The sheer, two-faced hypocrisy. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone against the wall. I wanted to call her and unleash a torrent of fury, but I didn't. I took a deep, shaky breath and typed back a simple reply of feeling okay. Just tired. Talk later. I had to play my part, too. I had to let them walk into the trap they had so carefully set for me. That day, I went through the motions. I even opened my laptop and looked at the blueprints for a new community project I was designing. It was a space meant for families, with parks and playgrounds and homes filled with light. A week ago, I had looked at those plans with a sense of purpose and joy. Now, they just looked like lines on a page, a hollow mockery of the life I thought I was building. I found myself scrolling through the photos on my phone. There were hundreds of them. Me and Liam on a beach, smiling into the sun. The three of us, me, Liam, and Chloe, laughing at a game night, arms slung around each other. Happy memories from a life that wasn't real. Each picture was a stab to the heart. It was all a lie. It had all been a lie for weeks, maybe longer. The grief was a physical weight, but underneath it, something else was beginning to form, resolve. A cold, quiet determination. They thought I was fragile. They thought I would break. They had mistaken my kindness for weakness, my trust for naivete. They had written a script where I was the crying, hysterical victim. But they didn't know I had a copy of that script. And I was about to rewrite the ending. It came 2 days after the phone call. 2 days that I spent living in a waking nightmare. A silent observer in my own home. I was polite, I was calm, I was a ghost. Liam, on the other hand, seemed to be getting more and more comfortable in his role. The feigned stress he had been performing for weeks was replaced by a new, somber gravity. He was preparing. That evening, he came home from work and found me on the sofa, reading a book I hadn't absorbed a single word of. He didn't turn on the television or start making dinner. He just stood in the middle of the living room, looking at me with a carefully constructed expression of concern. He began, his voice soft and laced with artificial sadness. Can we turn that off? I think we need to talk. My heart, which I thought had already been shattered into a million pieces, gave a painful thud. Here it was. Showtime. I calmly placed my bookmark in the book and set it aside. I folded my hands over my stomach, a subconscious gesture of protection. Okay, I said, my voice unnervingly steady. What's on your mind, Liam? He took a deep breath, like an actor about to deliver a difficult monologue. He walked over and sat down, not next to me on the sofa, but in the armchair opposite me. He needed the space, the stage. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, and looked at me with eyes full of counterfeit pain. This is really hard for me to say, he started, his voice cracking on cue. And I want you to know that I love you. I love you so much. Do you? I asked, the question hanging in the air, sharper than he expected. That he faltered for a second, thrown off by my directness. But he recovered quickly. Yes. Of course, I do. But, things have been off between us lately. Ever since you told me you were pregnant. He was following the script perfectly. It was almost impressive, in a horrifying way. You've been distant, he continued, his voice gaining momentum. Secretive. And I've been trying to tell myself it's just the hormones, or the stress of it all. But there's this doubt in my mind. A terrible doubt that I can't shake. He let that hang in the air, waiting for my panic denial, for my tears. I gave him nothing. I just watched him, my expression unreadable. My silence was unnerving him. I could see it in the slight twitch in his jaw. He pushed on, his voice dropping to a near whisper, as if he were confessing a great sin instead of making a calculated, cruel accusation. Alara. I have to ask you this. And it's killing me. But I have to know. He looked up, his eyes locking with mine. He summoned a single, perfect tear that welled and traced a path down his cheek. The performance was flawless. Alara. Is this baby mine? The question landed in the silent room with the force of a physical blow. This was the moment. The moment he expected me to shatter. The moment he would get to be the victim, the heartbroken man betrayed by the woman carrying his child, or someone else's. He expected me to cry. To scream, to defend my honor, to fall apart at his feet, and in the long, stretched out silence that followed, I did none of those things. I simply held his gaze. The grief and the shock of the past 2 days had been burned away in the fires of my rage, and what was left was as hard and clear as diamond. I let him wait. I let him sit in the ugly silence of what he'd just done. I watched the feigned sadness in his eyes begin to curdle into confusion, then into genuine discomfort. He was losing control of the scene. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Finally. After a silence that felt like an eternity, I leaned forward slightly, mirroring his posture. A small, cold smile touched my lips, a smile I didn't know I was capable of. That's a very interesting question, Liam, I said, my voice quiet, calm, and utterly devoid of the hysteria he was expecting. A very, very interesting question. Especially since I know exactly why you're asking it. The look on Liam's face was something I will never forget. The mask of the heartbroken victim didn't just slip, it shattered. His carefully rehearsed sadness evaporated, replaced by raw, unfiltered confusion. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. He looked like a man who had pulled the pin on a grenade, only to realize he was in a locked room. What? What are you talking about? He stammered, his eyes darting around as if searching for a new script. I'm talking about your plan, I said, my voice remaining level and cold. I didn't raise it. I didn't need to. The truth was loud enough. Your clever, diabolical plan to make me the villain in a story that you wrote. His face went pale. A flicker of genuine fear appeared in his eyes. I don't know what you mean. You're not making any sense, Alara. Oh, I think I'm making perfect sense, I continued, standing up slowly and walking towards the kitchen, the scene of his crime. I turned back to look at him. It was a good performance, Liam. Really? The single tear was a masterful touch. Did you practice that in the mirror? Stop it, he snapped, his voice finally losing its soft edge and turning sharp with panic. You're hysterical. The pregnancy is making you paranoid. Am I? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Was I paranoid on Thursday night, when I came out of the bathroom and you were on the phone with your mother right here in the kitchen? Was I imagining things when I heard you confessing your pathetic mistake? The color drained completely from his face. He looked like a statue. He was frozen, caught. I didn't stop. The words I had held inside for 2 days came pouring out, not in a torrent of anger, but in a precise, surgical strike. Let me see if I remember it correctly. It was a stupid, terrible mistake. It only happened a couple of times. Your words, I believe. And then you mentioned a name. A very familiar name, in fact. Chloe. He flinched as if I had physically struck him, and then came the best part, I went on, my voice dripping with the contempt I felt. The part where your mother gave you that wonderful advice. Just tell her you don't think the baby is mine. What a brilliant strategy. She'll be so busy defending herself, you said. She won't see the real problem. And my favorite line of all, the real core of your character, if she leaves me, then I'm the victim. I let my words hang in the air, each one a nail in the coffin of his deception. He stared at me, his mouth agape, utterly exposed. The charming marketing manager, the master of spin, had nothing left to sell. You were going to let me believe that you thought I, the woman carrying your child, had betrayed you, I said, my voice finally trembling, not with sadness, but with pure rage. You were going to destroy my heart, my reputation, my sense of self, all to avoid taking responsibility for your own disgusting actions. You didn't just cheat, Liam. You plotted. You conspired with your mother to emotionally devastate me as your exit strategy. He finally broke. Alara, please, he whispered, his voice cracking for real this time. I can't explain. Explain what? I shot back. Explain how you could sleep in our bed every night after being with my best friend? Explain how Chloe could look me in the eye and give me advice on our relationship? Explain which part of your plan I misunderstood? The infidelity, or the psychological warfare you were about to wage on me? I walked back to the coffee table where my engagement ring sat, still catching the light. It looked like a cheap prop. I picked it up, not with anger, but with a strange sense of detachment. It's over, Liam, I said, my voice regaining its cold finality. I opened his hand, which was resting limply on his knee, and dropped the ring into his palm. It landed with a soft, metallic clink. This is over. Our engagement. Our future. Us. I pointed toward the door. Pack a bag. And get out of my house. For a moment, he just sat there, looking at the ring in his hand as if he'd never seen it before. The architect of this entire disaster, buried under the rubble of his own making. Then, as I stood there, resolute and unmoving, he seemed to finally understand that there were no more scenes to play. The show was over. He had been exposed, completely and utterly. Without another word, he stood up and walked toward the bedroom, a broken, defeated man. While Liam was in the bedroom, making rustling, defeated sounds as he threw his things into a suitcase, I stood in the living room. The adrenaline that had fueled my confrontation began to subside, leaving a profound, aching emptiness in its wake. But beneath the ache, there was a strange and unfamiliar feeling, peace. It was the quiet calm that follows a devastating storm. The air was clear. The lies were gone. There was one more thing I had to do. I couldn't let Chloe continue to live under the illusion that her secret was safe. She didn't deserve a gentle letting down or a tearful, dramatic confrontation. She deserved to be exposed in the same cold, efficient way she had helped to orchestrate my pain. I took out my phone, my fingers steady. I found her name in my contacts, the name of the woman I had called my sister. I pressed the call button and, as it started ringing, I hit the speakerphone icon, placing the phone on the coffee table. Liam emerged from the bedroom, dragging a suitcase behind him. He stopped when he heard the ringing, his face a mask of dread. He knew who I was calling. Chloe answered on the third ring, her voice sickeningly cheerful. Hey, Elle. I was just thinking about you. How are you? I didn't answer her question. I just looked at Liam, who stood frozen by the doorway. I know, Chloe, I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. The silence on the other end of the line was immediate and absolute. The cheerful facade dropped. What, she finally whispered, her voice small and thin. I know about you and Liam, I stated plainly. I know everything. Every lie. Every late-night work session. Every piece of advice you gave me while you were stabbing me in the back. I could hear her sharp intake of breath. Liam squeezed his eyes shut, his knuckles white where he gripped the handle of his suitcase. He was a captive audience to the final demolition of his world. Alara, wait, it's not what you think, she stammered, the panic rising in her voice, isn't it? I asked calmly. Then what is it, Chloe? I'm genuinely curious to hear the story you two cooked up. Liam just tried out his version on me. It was quite the performance. He thought I cheated on him. Can you believe that? More silence. I had her. I had them both. They were caught in the wreckage, with no lies left to hide behind. Don't ever contact me again, I said, my voice as hard as steel. Either of you. We're done. And with that, I ended the call. I didn't give her a chance to explain, to apologize, to cry. She didn't deserve my anger or my tears. She deserved nothing. Liam looked at me, his face ashen. There was nothing left to say. He knew it. He turned, opened the front door, and walked out of my life, dragging the suitcase behind him. The click of the door closing behind him was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. In the days that followed, I began the slow, painful process of rebuilding. I told my family everything. Their shock quickly turned to furious, protective love. My brother came over and changed the locks. My mother filled my fridge with food and my apartment with her quiet, steady presence, never pushing me to talk but always ready to listen. There was pain, of course. A deep, profound grief for the future I had lost, for the man I thought Liam was, and for the sister I thought I had in Chloe. Some nights, I would cry until I had nothing left. But I was not broken. My foundation wasn't Liam or Chloe, it was myself. And my foundation was strong, though I am an architect. I know how to build things. I know that sometimes, you have to tear a structure down to its base to get rid of the rot. You have to clear away the debris before you can lay a new, stronger foundation. And that is what I am doing. Today, I went back to the blueprints for the community project at work. I looked at the little houses, the parks, the open spaces. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of my old self, a spark of hope. I picked up my pencil and began to draw them. Why life will not be the one I had planned with Liam. It will be different. It will be a structure of my own design, built not on lies and secrets, but on honesty, resilience, and the unconditional love I already feel for the small life growing inside me. It will be a house for two, my child and me. And it will be built on the most solid ground imaginable. To the audience, after listening to today's story, perhaps it has raised some new questions in your mind. How do we truly know the people we let into our lives? And what gives us the strength to rebuild when the life we planned is shattered by betrayal? Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create fresh stories that remind us of the complexities of the human heart. They show us that while we are all vulnerable, we are all capable of incredible resilience. We are all human, navigating the unpredictable paths of love, loss, and self-discovery. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share it with someone who might appreciate the journey from heartbreak to empowerment. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to keep an eye out for more stories coming soon.